Hey there guys, thank you for taking the time to watch this video. The video is designed to teach you a little bit about EPS, or to give it its full name, earnings per share. Earnings per share. Okay. What I want to do in this video is I want to go through and achieve certain objectives. Okay. The first objective is for me to explain, well, what exactly is EPS. If you had to define what earnings per share was to somebody, what is earnings per share? The next thing I'd like to achieve is to explain to you, well, who uses earnings per share, and maybe also explain why. Why do they use EPS as a measure? What do they use EPS for? Okay. Lastly, what I would like to do is I'd like to go through with you how to calculate earnings per share. So how do we work out the EPS figure? Okay. So if we start at the very beginning, what is earnings per share? Okay, I think in order for me to explain fully what earnings per share is, what I first of all need to do is to show you how to calculate EPS. What is the formulae? Okay, so EPS, what we will do is we tend to take earnings, okay, earnings for a given organization, and we divide that by the number of shares in issue at that point in time. Okay, so what do we mean by earnings? Well, earnings is effectively profit after tax. Okay, so I've abbreviated that to PAT, but profit after tax. Hopefully you know how to calculate profit after tax, but if you don't, the way in which you can calculate profit after tax is you take the revenue which is earned by the organization, sales basically. Then what we will do is we'll deduct any cost of sale, we will deduct any kind of admin costs, we will deduct any kind of distribution costs, okay, and then that gives us what we class as profit before interest and tax. So profit before interest and tax, I've just abbreviated that, okay. Then what will happen is you take off any interest expense that relates to loans, okay, and that gives us profit before tax. And then what we do is we take off any tax that's been paid or has to be paid to the tax authority. That gives us profit after tax, okay, and it is profit after tax that is the earnings figure. Okay, profit after tax is what we call a distributable reserve. Okay, so distributable reserve, and basically what that means is we can distribute it to shareholders. Okay, we distribute it to shareholders as a dividend. Okay, so if you were to, I suppose, want a definition, if you were to give a definition as to what earnings per share is, okay, it's a proportion of the company's earnings available per share to shareholders. Okay, I'm not saying that shareholders will definitely get all of these earnings, okay, but as part of a dividend, then shareholders might get some or part of that, if not all of it. It depends on the organization. Okay, so in a nutshell, that is what EPS is. Okay, so who uses earnings per share? I've already alluded to this fact by going through explaining what is EPS, but the individuals or the group of stakeholders that use EPS tend to be shareholders. Okay, shareholders use earnings per share as a measure of the possible dividend. So the measure of the maximum possible dividend. Okay, like I said earlier, it's not necessarily the case they're going to get that dividend, but it's a good indication as to what the dividend could be. Okay, so it's used by individual shareholders, it's used by institutional investors. You know, shareholders are just people that effectively own shares in an organization. I suppose as well, in that same respect, it can also be used by potential shareholders, so potential investors. Okay, so potential investors will also want to know, well, how much dividend might we want to get? Okay, so those are the primary individuals that use EPS, and like I said, the reason they use it is it helps them understand what the dividend is. But it can also be used by, let's call them market analysts. So market analysts. Okay, market analysts use EPS as a measure of performance. So what we mean by performance normally is profitability, and because earnings and profit is used in EPS, that's why it's used as a measure of performance. And what it allows the market analysts to do, it allows it to compare different organizations very easily. Okay, because if you can imagine, you've got let's say you've got company A. Okay, company A has earnings per share of $2 per share. Okay, on the same stock exchange, maybe we have company B. Company B has earnings per share of $1.50. Okay, and then you've also got company C. Let's say company C has EPS of $3 per share. Okay, so at a glance, we can assume as a market analyst that it is company C that is the better performing company because they have the highest EPS, but then it's company C that is the lowest, is the worst performing company because they've got $1.50 per share. Okay, so that's how your market analysts could use EPS. Okay, so how do you actually go about calculating EPS? Well, we've already seen what the EPS formula is. Okay, so earnings per share. Okay, we take the earnings of an organization, we divide it by the number of shares that are in issue. Okay, so let's say for 2015, company A has earnings of $1 million. Okay, so remember, earnings is your profit after tax. Yeah, we can get that figure from the P&L, from the income statement. It's generally the bottom line figure, and then the number of shares that are in issue. Let's say it's 500,000 shares. Okay, now we can get that information from the notes in the financial statements. You can also get that information from the financial statements themselves. So you look at the balance sheet, you look at the share capital account, and you look at how many shares are in that share capital account. Okay, now that gives us a figure of $2 per share. Okay, so I know for 2015 that this company has EPS of $2 per share. Okay, but when you do a calculation like this, ideally we have a comparator. Ideally we have some kind of benchmarking figure, and you can use other companies as benchmarking figures, as we did in that example there. Okay, but then an organization, when they produce earnings per share, when they publish earnings per share information, they also tend to produce a comparator for the previous year. Okay, so let's say the previous year this organization had $2 million per share. Okay, and the number of shares that were in issue were still 500,000. Okay, in that instance, we can see there that last year EPS was $4 per share. This year EPS is $2 per share. Okay, so there's been a downward movement in EPS. Now, in later videos, we'll talk about what impact that downward movement will have, what impact on the organization and the share price that downward movement have, and also we will explore, well, what can an organization do if they experience such a movement. Okay, however, at this point in time, that would be the end of the video, the explanation of EPS. We've achieved all of those given objectives. Thank you for taking the time to watch the video. Hopefully you found it informative, and take care. Bye bye.